I think let's just talk about, that first part of, I don't know, how we got here. Heather and I wish Heather was here. Heather and I had this idea. Sometimes when we start out on a project, we have something very specific in mind and we try and stick to that. But our project started with something very specific in mind and we've stuck to none of it. We've really grown beyond what we promised at that initial stage when we first imagined having a look at ALC and how that could improve older adults' quality of life, and also the returning back to home, however they defined home, where that was and what their choices were around where they went to and how they got there. And so Heather and Donna had a conversation about how we might be able to do an ALC in a personal care home. And so we wrote a proposal to do that. And Heather got beds from SHA. It was, our vision was that people should have choice. We should continue to grow older where we want to be and not where SHA directs us to be. And I think that we haven't achieved that yet, but it's something that we keep working towards and really hard.
Alicia, I am Rosalind's research coordinator, so I do a lot of behind the scenes work, working on ethics applications and amendments and making sure that we are following protocol in that way. Organize all of the moving pieces that is the HAC project. So that's me.
We do is we support family caregivers with technology and community and education. So Team Care Pal is almost like Facebook for caregivers, where we support family caregivers with an app to reduce their burnouts and connect them to resources and supports and community organizations, along the continuum of care. And so, a caregiver and her husband was there with dementia in an ALC bed. And I came in there and she reiterated everything that was wrong with her husband. Like she had memorized and she would said it over and over to all the, healthcare professionals. And that was like her job. And I said, I'm glad you know that about your husband, but actually I'm here for you. Like, how are you doing? And she just welled up in tears and started crying. And she said, I am not doing well. And I'm like, okay, like, that's okay. Like those feelings are valid. Your job, and it was like nobody had ever asked her that before, if she was okay. You just sort of get wrapped into this vortex. And first of all, Rosalind's excitement is very addictive. Like you kind of get wrapped up and you start getting excited about it. And it took a long time to kind of fit together all the pieces of the possibility of what this project could look like. The value that everyone brought to the table was insurmountable because everybody came at it with such different backgrounds that there was no choice but to create something beautiful.
We are, I think, a lot of the time talking about people that are sort of left behind or falling through the cracks as having a health state that's not important because they can't get better, and so I think that that's kind of what I want to put forward as I'm talking a lot, but I want to put forward as my focus here is that I am a kind of classical economist and I do work on quantifications and dollar values, but that it's really in working with this group and with people with expertise like what you have, trying to expand those sorts of arguments more into the realm of qualitative well-being and qualitative kind of outcomes that we're looking. Opened my eyes to this sort of connectivity and this sort of almost unquantifiable but somewhat quantifiable thing where the effects are so big. Like long-term care is the single largest cost in the healthcare system, right? Like it's, if you're trying to show value, showing value in long-term care makes a lot of sense. That I wanted to expand some of the ideas of health economics into things that were more equity-based, into things that were more kind of emotion-based and well-being based. But a lot of what we're doing are well-being interventions and social interventions that we're looking to have an effect on health outcomes. We're talking with patients, we're sitting with patients, we're helping patients. We're not giving them a new medication. We're not giving them new exercises, but we are doing a social intervention that has medical outcomes. But to see that engagement on a much deeper and fundamental level, to the extent that it's not the same thing. Like there's engagement, oh, how often are you using this program? And then there's engagement on like, oh, how is this sitting in your chest? How does this feel in your heart? How do you think about this? Does it help you, when a person in care is going to sleep at night and they're, do they have an easier time falling asleep? Do they have less worries? Are they less distress. This isn't something that I think, this isn't something that I feel, although it is, this is something that is definitely true, you know, and I know that we're going to have the quantification of that. And I think regardless of the magnitude of it, just showing that is going to be a big deal for us. Just showing people that, you know, putting your hand on somebody's shoulder, sitting with them for a little bit, is really truly quantifiable. You know, it makes a quantifiable difference.
It's not something magical. It's not a pill. It's not a new medication. You know, these are things within us that we can absolutely do, and we all have these tools. And so it's just recognizing those, and like Kyle said, just putting pen to paper and being able to voice it and measure it and share it and then duplicate it. It's just such a beautiful thing.
For the people in care, they have this telltale heart of I'm a burden, you know, I'm a burden to my family, I'm a burden to the system and all of this stuff. And they, you know, they worry about all of these things. And then the caregivers have this telltale heart of I'm not doing enough, you know, I don't care enough. I'm feeling sad about this, I'm feeling down about this. And so, you know, a big part of what we're doing, and I think especially with the patient partners, is just this holding and this reassurance to that burden of feeling of guilt, you know, and to kind of sit with them and tell them that, like, hey, you know, it's so you deserve physiotherapy, you deserve to go out for a card game or for dancing or whatever it is. You deserve to have somebody come and sit with you for an hour and listen to your problems, you know, and then to go to the caregivers and to say, like, you know, even just by having an app and having people care about you, it lets you know that no, this is a big deal. This isn't, you know, your burden is real. You know, you're not just kind of run into this and you're doing it poorly, but everybody else does it well.
I think it's really about holding space. As I listen to Kyle and Cindy as you talk, it's about holding a space, that open space where people can be and just be. They don't have to be somebody else. They can just be themselves. But what do we see in personal care homes is that lack of equity, that lack of accessibility to personal care homes or culturally appropriate homes, or homes that just accept diversity of whatever. Finding somebody that could help us speak to diversity, inclusivity, equity, social justice. And I think, you know, Andre was awesome in sharing Jenica with me and saying, you know, speak to Jenica. And I was always grateful that he allowed me to explore it. And Jenica does the same things. He allows me to explore culture, Indigenous ways of knowing without feeling inadequate. Like it's that. And I feel within our team is that there's no judgment. We have that ability to ask questions. And sometimes I say to Jenica, I don't think I'm doing this right, but what should I be doing and how should we be doing it? And how do we acknowledge in meaningful ways? And I started to think, you know, it's about choice. It's about the place that we want to call home. It's not about an institution. It's not about long-term care. It can be all of those things, but what's home to us? And it really sits inside our person. We carry home wherever we go. It may not be a geographical location. It might be a feeling, a smell, a taste, people, the way the streets are, the cars people drive. And how do we help people in alternate level of care beds build that sense of home when they have such uncertainty? They don't get to choose that home in a lot of cases. They don't get to define what feels like home. We're not really paying attention to the feeling of home. We're just trying to get people to a geographical location in a structure that we then say, well, this is home. Doesn't feel it, look it, taste it, see it, but it's going to be home.
So there's, you know, there's opportunities to really grow together. And I think that's where, you know, maybe the initial project, you know, conception might have started here, but it's grown and it's evolved. And I think that's a natural evidence of what we see in healthcare and in life. The other thing that I think was really beautiful actually is that you know, when mobility is restricted and you're suddenly placed in an ALC spot, you know, the idea of like how do you grow together when when you don't know if you've grown in this way before. It was great to see the development of these culture days evolve at Diamond House. And so we're looking at, you know, helping to create a way to visit a place, taste the food, you know, like understand the culture, kind of have an experiential immersion where there's no this is how to think, this is what to think, but just an experience to share. And I think you would start to see, older populations that might have been a little bit quieter, want to role model conversations, especially when there's a younger person there, and try to make them less nervous so they're less nervous. And so, sometimes when you think, okay, like, let's imagine I'm in an ALC bed, I've had, like less physio scheduled in my day to day, kind of waiting. I haven't found a place. Now I'm classified as ALC. I moved to this place. And like, you kind of have to backtrack and ramp back up again. And during that period of hiatus, there's an impact of stress. So when you have the opportunity for something like, culture days or activities that are kind of planned throughout the weeks in the home, then that can kind of decrease the stress, build up your sense of belonging, and then compounded with the ability to connect with Indigenous populations. We've connected with the STC trauma informed support workers who help to bring in, different aspects of care to patients and families at request. And I think Marlene has sort of learned from her direct engagement with patients, what it looks like for people that are in ALC beds. How often are they getting phone calls from SHA to say, oh, have you looked at places this week? Like, do you have an update? Like, how long do you think you're going to be occupying this ALC bed? And all of those things, I think, are really important to have realized, and result of being able to connect people and families with support workers that can help to bridge that feeling of feeling at home when they're placed in a place that's a different setting.
When we find something new, is like looking at it, exploring it, diving deep into it, and then finding possibilities, not of answers, but just innovation or creation or a new collaboration, or building some opportunity for us to co-design and to look at something a little, I don't know, I guess we're brave. And lots of times, and I think about, as we listen to these stories, the times that we've been brave, and we've had to really just pivot quite a lot and spend a lot of time sitting with something until we feel like we're more comfortable. We're not comfortable, but we're not discomfortable. I think the important piece was, when we were establishing the program, was the recognition that we needed someone that could help people. And when we started, it was to navigate. And what we were navigating, we imagined, was the healthcare system. But I think what we've really learned is you can't navigate the healthcare system, because the decision is made when people come here, and helping people to, I guess, in some ways have a voice, and giving them that encouragement. Thinking about the navigation role in ALCs, which takes it beyond a social worker. It's not about the social worker's role. It's about this friendship, this connection, this ability of trust, of acceptance. Talk about the evolution of you.
The other day I was visiting with a very obese lady who's in a wheelchair, and she told me, in my dreams, I dance. And I want to dance. Do you think there's a man who could hold me up so I could dance?
Aww.
We talked about options, like, do you think we could have a dance where you could be in your chair and we could just be dancing to the music together? And because dreams are important. And even if that dream is something that you physically can't, I said, my problem is I'm really attached to these people, and when they move and I don't know where they've gone, it just leaves a hole in me. And she was so empathetic. She goes, I will try very hard to never leave, move a person without letting you know. And I just thought, that's progress.
That's progress.
That's progress. My advice isn't the right advice for everyone. Everybody's different.
Talk about you're building a wall brick by brick. And I think what we're trying to do is take that wall apart brick by brick. And even if it's only loosening a brick a little bit or getting just a little ray of light, like, we're trying to break through that in any way we can. And I see that that's what Marlene is really doing, is that dreams are important and we need a place to start. And that place to start can be, okay, you can't put me up in Edmonton overlooking the river valley, maybe, even though that's my home. That's my place where my heart is, right? But you can talk to me, you can learn things about me, and you can make pragmatic steps towards that feeling of home that are important to me, right? You know, big and small, how can we just sort of just break down that wall in any way we can? You know, maybe it'll still be standing no matter what, But if we can let some light in, that still makes a big difference.
I feel like, yeah, thinking about your question, it might be a good time to offer some of the views I'm carrying about this when you ask the question, where did we start? Where have we been? What were those forks in the road where choices were made and elephants were waved at? But I think very good things have happened in this vortex where there is a pulling together, that humility piece that also has come from Rosalind in that connector lead, as has others, where I don't sit as a lead of this project making assumptions that I have the right and wrong answers. Here's what the project is. We submitted it as X. It will be done as Y and X, and that's that. It's rigid. It's held tightly, and that's what we've observed with a lot of other projects who are trying for innovation, trying for wisdom, trying for two-eyed ways of seeing. That doesn't work if you can't humbly be curious and suspend judgment and sit in these spaces of genuine openness and that sweet spot of genuine, authentic relationship and curiosity. And I think that's what's happened here. So again, the lens I'm taking is that there has been a what of this team. And I would argue, and forgive me, I'm externally processing it here as I go, but the what that has been done has also been mirrored in the how this group has worked together. Things. It's a real emphasis on, okay, who can do that? And again, those connector roles, then everyone sort of took on those connector roles, right? It was spread, it snowballed, it developed in a way where it was modeled. And again, why I get really excited about the process of this team is that I've worked with hundreds of teams who do this, and it's a tough thing to do to live the model of improvement. But that's what this team does. They say, oh, what are we trying to accomplish? And they keep coming back to the essence of the vision of this group. And then how are we going to know? Okay, well, like we measure it, but we measure it in ways that are so meaningful. We're really deliberately thinking about how what we do here makes a difference here and how we can tell those stories in good qualitative and quantitative ways. And then we're thinking about like, hey, what kind of ideas can we try and test? That's the model for improvement right there with a PDSA plan, do study, article attached to it. This team lives that. So they go and they try something, they plan it out, they talk about it, and they're not rigidly connected to that white supremacy of perfectionism either. This idea of it has to be perfect before it goes, that is perfection, right? It is the enemy of the good, and perfection stops every improvement initiative and therefore stops every true innovation. This group says, okay, we've got an idea. Does it connect to our genuine overarching what we're trying to accomplish? Yes. We know what we want to test. Let's give it a go. They try it. They've done it. They come back together regularly. These regular meetings, these regular touch points with, again, open space concepts are applied here, whether people know that's what they're doing or not. We do it beautifully where who's ever here are the right people to be here. When it starts, it starts. When it stops, it stops. And whatever happened was the exact right thing. That was the only thing that could have happened. And when we see that play out, who's ever there, the right knowledge is built on the asset, again, connecting community development. I would, from an outsider perspective, the fact that you've modeled the model for improvement with asset-based community development and linked those together is what you've done so differently. So you try something, you come back, you talk about, how'd that go? That worked, that didn't. Okay, what do we abandon? What do we adjust? What do we amend? Okay, let's keep going. That works. And then you're in a continuous cycle of improvement and change because it's not static. It's not stopped. It's not we meet twice and no, everybody comes. And the other beautiful thing in some of the key principles of the asset-based community development is you build relationships, and those relationships go across. Like Kyle was talking about, like, this is typically how we have relationships, and this is a bit different here. The fact that across this team, you've got Marlene and Kyle coming together and building a relationship in an authentic way around their strengths and how that can work together, it's huge. That typically doesn't happen, but nurturing relationships in this as a community have happened, and then engaging the broader community. So this is a community has been engaged, but then it engaged Diamond, it engages SHA, it is trying to engage at all of those levels. And it's a real recognition, that other principle of gifts. So there's an appreciation here. You've got a connector, then you appreciate what's good, you organize around that, you test some stuff, you map out everybody's abilities. You bring in new people like Paula. Every time you meet someone, you're open to the universe, bring people in, it continues to build. You continue building the community around the vision because the vision's never shifting. You mobilize what's happening and you leverage something out of it, new activities, new resources, and then you go back into that circle around appreciating more what's good because it's building good on good. There's a lot of theories out there, there's a lot of models out there, and there's not always the fierceness and willingness to be courageous to go into them. And I think teams in their visions and missions talk about we will be brave. But to be brave, right, we first need to be experiencing fear. And a lot of folks never leave the comfort zone to get into a fear spot, right? This team is willing to leave a space of comfort, of status quo, to try new things and have been courageous to keep moving through it. When a lot of folks don't leave the safety for a lot of reasons, and I appreciate some of those are beyond. But I think here what we've seen is a willingness to live and to act into a new way of being. Most people hope for it, wish it. We can't, hope's not the plan, right? You've acted into a new way of being, and I think it's commendable and it's super exciting.
The idea of the trauma that Marlene was experiencing when she was engaging at that relational level with the people who are in our ALC bed. And we made that decision to provide Marlene support regularly. We all stood up and said, have a conversation with me, call me, do this, do that, which gave Marlene all of us to choose from. How did that change the burden or the responsibilities or that tension and discomfort with the stories that you kept hearing? Has it changed the way that you can function in your work?
But it made a huge difference, Somehow it levels the playing field, it shares the burden, I don't feel alone, and I thank you all.
And when you think about a clinical trial, we would give half the people the treatment, half the people we wouldn't give the treatment, and then wait and see, well, who's doing better or not. In this project, that's inconceivable for us. We'll very much go for the humanistic and improvement benefit of this at the expense of being able to catch that outcome if we need to, right? Even the health economist is agreeing with that, saying, yeah, you know what? Like, first and foremost, this is an endeavor of humanism. And we're more concerned with making a beneficial difference than we are with capturing that beneficial difference. And that's I think it really reflects well on us, and that's something that we can highlight.
And I see it in our team. It's about what gives us joy, what makes us excited as a person. And sometimes I feel that the person comes first, and outside of our roles and responsibilities to be about the collective. It's the collective of the team. It's the collective of how can we actually bring alongside everyone that we work with and care with. And I think that that's all the people in the ALC program, but here in Diamond House, it's all the people in Diamond House. We give everyone that equitable opportunity to benefit from what we're providing, really gifts that we bring each time, and each person that we encounter gives us another gift, and that's their experience, their stories, their what's happened in their lives. They're the gifts that we get. Close it out with something that you're feeling or what you've observed.
To do that, like, we really do have a team that is collaborating in really important and meaningful ways. Quantification as being my right hand and kind of emotionalism as being my left hand, and we're really fighting with both hands. Membrane, we are all part of the same group and the same organism, and I think that that's our real strength and power here.
That we're all silos sharing the same burden. The more we learn to support each other and work together, the better it's going to be.
As a newbie, I am thrilled with the opportunity to work with such an incredible team. The learning is beyond my capacity so far. I hope for the future.
Kyle said, not only is there collaborative behind everything, but there's a sense of family here too, where we can be our raw versions of ourselves. Rosalind has really bred into the culture of this team that we can show up as we are and ask questions and be vulnerable.
I think one of the things that was championed throughout this project and this meeting is the idea that stories are data.
And so when I sit here and I hear the richness of the conversations and just the realness of your experiences, right? Me feel really emotional is the importance of the people, because the system doesn't always allow for that. And reminds me that there is hope.
Everybody's relaying their information in a way that it's useful to everybody else at the table. So, and there's a lot of cognitive empathy developed so that you have some understanding and empathy towards your fellow workers and what their burden is that they're bringing to the table. I see that here of that work in that you're alive until you die. And I think that's so important that you're acknowledging that here and that you're celebrating that here. And that you're accommodating that here. I think that's just really fantastic. I think that acknowledging aging is something that we don't really allow in our society. And so it's shoved away and we don't understand it. And I think that awareness about it and acceptance of it and embracing it is something that we all need to learn to do better as a society. I think this group's got a hand up.
But I miss those moments that we just talk and think about it, because that's living, and every time we come together we bring that living into here so well.